All right, let's get into it today. We are doing a deep dive into the world of underground mining, but not in the way you might think, though. We aren't talking about hard hats and pickaxes today, at least not yet. We are going to help get you ready for an interview for an underground miner position. And we've got a ton of resources to help us with that from RoleCatcher.
Yeah, and the cool thing about RoleCatcher is that it doesn't just like throw generic advice at you or whatever. They have these really cool AI tools that analyze job descriptions and can like tailor your prep accordingly. It's kind of like having a personal coach in your pocket for mining.
Yeah, it's crazy. They have career guides, sample interview questions, they even have AI-powered feedback, and that's all there to help you make the best answers you can. But I think before we get too much into those interview questions, we should probably step back and kind of set the stage first. What does an underground miner even do these days?
Well, it's changed a lot from that image we all have in our heads, I think. It's not all about brute strength anymore. It's a lot about operating complex machinery, making sure that all the safety protocols are followed, and like understanding how everything works from conveyor systems to ventilation.
Oh, yes, speaking of which, the work environment is not something that most people could even imagine. So imagine working miles below the surface in tunnels and shafts with like unique challenges everywhere you look.
Yeah, and that's why this prep is so important. The interviewer needs to know that you're not just like physically strong enough to do the work, but also that you're mentally ready for how demanding the environment is. They want to know that you can be isolated and deal with the potential hazards and the fact that you constantly need to be alert down there.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher's career guide goes into all that and gives you a really good picture of what the job is really like. It really lays out the pros and cons of the job. On one hand, you have a high earning potential and good job stability, but on the other hand, it's physically demanding, there are risks, and you could be working long hours in isolation.
Totally. But I think we should get to the core of this deep dive now, those interview questions. RoleCatcher has 10 sample questions that come up all the time in these interviews, and we are going to go through each one of them one by one. We'll talk about what the interviewer is looking for, how you should answer, and any follow-up questions they might ask.
And we'll also be pulling in stuff from RoleCatcher's career guide as we go. And we'll be looking at how their AI can help give you an advantage when answering. Ready to dig in?
Let's go. Question 1. What inspired you to become an underground miner? It seems pretty simple, but they are trying to gauge your motivation and passion with this one.
Yeah, for sure. You can't just say, I need a job. You have to think about what actually got you interested in mining. Was it a family member who worked in mining? Or maybe you're just fascinated with geology. Or maybe it's the sheer scale of the operations that drew you in. And RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you frame your answer in a way that makes sense for the values of the company. So you can highlight how genuine your interest is.
And you got to be ready for those follow-up questions too, like, what do you know about our company's mining operations? Like, they want to see that you did your research.
Research is key. So true.
Yeah.
Okay, question 2 is a big one. What safety procedures do you follow when working in an underground mine? This non-negotiable, you have to know this stuff.
Yeah, this one is all about showing that you know the safety protocols and that they're committed to safety. You should mention specific procedures like pre-shift inspections, lockout and tagout protocols, communication systems, and emergency response plans. RoleCatcher's AI can actually look at your answer and give you feedback too.
Oh, wow. That's cool. But don't just list things off when you answered. You have to explain why those procedures are so important. What kind of hazards are you avoiding by following those protocols? You have to show them that you get how serious safety is down in a mine. They might even follow that up with. Can you describe a time when you had to implement a safety procedure in a challenging situation? So you should have a good story ready for that.
Definitely. They want to see that you can make decisions in a tough spot and that you will always make safety the priority. Okay, so moving on to question 3. How do you deal with unexpected issues or emergencies when working underground?
Think fast. This is where you can show off how good you are at solving problems. And you also need to show them that you can stay calm when things get stressful. RoleCatcher's career guide talks about how important it is to be adaptable in this role, so you got to make sure that comes across in your answer.
Yeah, and they could ask something like, how do you communicate with your team during an emergency? Having clear and concise communication is so important in those situations.
Totally. All right, question number 4. How do you ensure that all equipment is properly maintained and functioning in an underground mine? This one is not just about knowing how to use a wrench.
Right. It's about showing that you are responsible and pay attention to the details. You should talk about pre-shift inspections, regular maintenance checks, knowing how to read the equipment manuals, and any certifications you have. RoleCatcher's AI can even help you show off those certifications in your answer.
Nice. And don't forget to tell them why all that is important. What happens if you don't do those things? They want to hire someone who understands how that affects safety and productivity. They might ask, can you describe a time when you identified a potential equipment issue and took steps to resolve it? So be ready with a story that shows how you take initiative.
All right, question 5. How do you work effectively as part of a team in an underground mine? Remember, down in a mine, you're not just working by yourself. It's all about relying on each other.
Teamwork makes the dream work down there, right? RoleCatcher's Career Guide has some interesting things to say about how the teams work, so make sure you bring that up in your answer.
Yeah.
Talk about communication, sharing information, and being supportive of your coworkers.
For sure. And they might ask you, how do you handle conflict within a team? They want to see that you can work through disagreements and keep the team environment positive.
Okay, question 6. How do you ensure that you are following all regulations and guidelines when working in an underground mine? This one's all about showing that you know the industry standards and that you'll follow them.
You want to mention specific regulations like the MSHA standards and any safety training you've had. And the cool thing is that RoleCatcher's AI can actually pull up the relevant regulations based on the job description. So your answer can be totally targeted at the specific company.
That's so smart.
Mm.
Okay, and make sure you show that you're proactive about this stuff. Do you keep up on the latest updates to regulations? Do you ask questions if you're not sure about something? They want to know that you take this stuff seriously. A possible follow-up question is, can you describe a time when you had to enforce a safety regulation, even if it wasn't popular with your team?
Mm-hmm.
That will show them that you have integrity and do what needs to be done.
Okay, question 7. How do you manage your time effectively when working in an underground mine?
Time management is so important when you're down there. Things are happening fast, and you need to be able to change your priorities if something comes up. What's cool is that RoleCatcher's AI can look at your answer and tell you how to show off your organizational skills better. It might even tell you to mention some time management techniques that you use.
Well, that's a good tip. And I bet they would follow up with something like, how do you handle distractions or interruptions while working underground?
It's a chaotic environment, so staying focused is key. Okay, so we're going to change gears a little bit now. Question 8 is all about how you work with other people. How do you handle conflicts or disagreements with coworkers or supervisors in an underground mine?
Oh, yeah. You know, it can be a really stressful environment down there, and emotions can get out of hand. They want to know that you can keep things professional when there's conflict, that you can be respectful even when you disagree. RoleCatcher's AI can help make sure your answer shows that you're a team player and can work through these kinds of issues.
Right, and they might ask you, have you ever had to deal with a really difficult conflict, and how did you deal with it?
Mm-hmm.
They're basically trying to see what kind of experience you have with difficult people. So be ready to give them a good example. Make sure you talk about the steps you took to calm things down and what you did to come up with a solution. Okay, so this next question might seem a little weird. How do you stay motivated and focused when working in an underground mine? But it's actually really important, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really unique environment down there. It can be tough on you both physically and mentally. They want someone who can stay positive and keep getting work done, even when things are challenging.
Yeah, you gotta be tough. So think about what keeps you going. Is it that feeling you get when you accomplish something? Or is it the people you work with? Or maybe it's knowing that you're working on something that really matters. RoleCatcher's Career Guide says that resilience is super important for this role, so make sure that comes across in your answer.
Good point. And you know they might ask, how do you deal with feeling isolated or bored when you're working underground? They want to know that you can deal with the mental side of things, too. You should be honest with them about how tough it can be. But also tell them what you do to deal with it. Like maybe you listen to music, podcasts, or audiobooks. Or maybe you focus on things you want to achieve outside of work to keep yourself balanced.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so question 10. This one's all about learning and growing. How do you ensure that you are continuing to learn and grow professionally as an underground miner?
Mining is changing all the time. There's new technologies and new safety rules coming out constantly. So they want to see that you're interested in learning new things and improving your skills.
Right. RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you stay up to date here. It can tell you about new things that are happening in the industry and suggest areas where you could learn more. Make sure you mention any courses you've taken, certifications you're working on. Even just saying that you like to learn from people who have more experience than you is good.
Definitely. And I bet they'll ask you, what are some of the new trends in the mining industry and how are you preparing for them? They want to see if you know what's going on in the industry and how well you can predict what's coming next. Be ready to talk about stuff like automation, digitalization, sustainability, and how you're staying ahead of the game.
Those are all really important. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to get into some questions that are more specific to what an underground miner does. So question 11 is, how would you describe your experience with operating and maintaining conveyor systems?
This is your chance to really show them your technical skills.
Yeah.
If you've worked with conveyors before, tell them what types you've used, what kind of maintenance you did on them, and if you've ever had to troubleshoot any problems with them.
Yeah, and even if you don't have experience with that specific thing, you can still talk about skills that would be useful in that role. Like maybe you've worked with other kinds of machinery before. Or maybe you're good at understanding how mechanical things work. Show them that you learn fast and can adapt.
Exactly. You know, they might even ask you, can you describe a time when you had to troubleshoot a problem with a conveyor system?
Hmm.
But even if you've never worked on a conveyor specifically, you can just tell them about a time you had to figure out and fix a technical problem at a different job. The main thing is to describe what you did, how you figured it out, and what the result was.
That makes sense. Okay, next question. Describe your experience with transporting equipment and materials in an underground mine. This one is all about showing that you know how to move things safely and efficiently in a tricky environment.
Right. So think about any experience you have operating things like forklifts or loaders, especially in tight spaces. If you've worked in a mine before, tell them exactly how you transported materials and how you made sure it was safe and efficient.
And even if you haven't worked in a mine, you can still talk about similar experiences. Like, have you ever driven big machines in other jobs? Or worked in a place with strict safety rules? RoleCatcher's AI can help you figure out how to use your skills from other jobs to answer this question.
That's helpful. And they might follow up with, what are some of the important things to think about when transporting hazardous materials in an underground mine? They're testing you here to see if you know the safety procedures and if you can handle a dangerous situation. You need to be ready to talk about specific things like labeling, ventilation, how to contain spills, and what to do in an emergency.
Gotcha. Okay, so this next question is relevant for any job you apply for. How do you prioritize tasks when working on multiple projects or assignments simultaneously?
You know, in mining, you're always juggling different tasks, so you need to show them that you're organized and flexible. Talk about how you decide what to do first. Do you make lists, use an app, have a system? RoleCatcher's AI can help you make sure your answer shows that you're organized and efficient.
That's really helpful. I bet they'll ask. Can you describe a situation where you had to reprioritize tasks because something unexpected happened? They want to see how well you can adapt and think on your feet. Have an example ready that shows you can solve problems and change your plan when you need to.
Okay, question 14. What are some of the key challenges you anticipate facing as an underground miner, and how would you approach them? This question is giving you a chance to show that you've really thought about the job and the tough things that come with it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to be honest about the hard parts. Talk about things like how physically demanding it is, how isolated you can feel, and how you always have to be aware of your surroundings. But then you got to tell them how you would deal with those things. Would you use what you've learned in the past? Would you ask people for help? RoleCatcher's Career Guide has some good info on the common challenges that miners face. You can use that to help you answer.
Yeah, good point. And they might ask you, can you describe a time when you had to overcome a similar challenge in a previous role? This lets you use your past experiences to show that you can take what you know and use it in new situations.
Okay, question 15 is all about staying up to date. How do you stay informed about updates to safety regulations and procedures in the mining industry?
This one is so important. You got to know what's going on. Tell them what you do to stay informed. Do you read industry publications? Belong to professional organizations? Go to training programs? RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you stay current too. It can tell you about any new rules and industry news so you'll always know what's going on.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Make sure you tell them that you're proactive about safety. Do you go to safety meetings? Do you try to learn about new technologies? Do you take any courses?
Right, and they'll probably ask you, can you describe a time when you learned about a new safety rule or procedure and actually used it in your work?
Mm-hmm.
This is to show that you can put what you learn into practice and that you really care about safety. Okay, on to question 16, and this one's all about making tough choices. Describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision that impacted safety in the workplace.
Yeah, this is where they want to see how you use your best judgment and that you'll do the right thing. They want to know that you'll put safety first, even when it's hard. So think about a time you had to make a call that could have put someone at risk. Maybe you had to stop work, even though there was pressure to keep going. RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you tell your story in a way that shows you make good ethical decisions.
That's a great tip.
When you answer, make sure you describe what was happening, what things you had to think about, what you decided to do, and why you made that choice. Really emphasize that you were following the safety rules and that you were willing to do the right thing, even if it meant people weren't happy with you.
Right. They might ask, what happened after you made your decision and how did you handle it? Be ready to talk about the good and the bad things that happened and show them that you take responsibility for your actions and that you learned from it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, question 17 is about dealing with stress. How do you handle stress or pressure when working in a demanding and potentially hazardous environment? Like, this is all about how resilient you are emotionally.
It's totally fine to admit that working in a mine is stressful. Tell them how you deal with it. Maybe try to keep a good balance between work and your personal life, or maybe you practice mindfulness. Maybe you rely on your support network to help you out. RoleCatcher's Career Guide talks about how important mental health is for miners, so use that to help you answer this one.
Good point. And they might follow up with, can you describe a time when you felt overwhelmed or stressed at work, and what steps did you take to manage the situation? If you have a specific story ready for this one, it will really show them that you know yourself and how to deal with tough situations.
Definitely. All right, question 18. Describe your experience with working in confined spaces. This is a big one for underground mining. It's both physically and mentally challenging.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you've worked in those kinds of spaces before, describe what the environments were like, what safety measures you had to take, and any problems you had. And if you have any special training or certifications for working in confined spaces, definitely mention those.
And even if you've never worked in a mine, you can still talk about similar experiences from other jobs. Like, have you ever worked in construction or maintenance? Or any other job where you had to be in a tight spot? RoleCatcher's AI can help you connect your skills from other jobs to this question.
That's really useful. They might ask, can you describe a time when something unexpected happened while you were working in a confined space? They want to see how you react under pressure. Can you think clearly when things get tough?
Right. Okay, so question 19 is all about the future. What are your long-term career goals in the mining industry?
This is where you get to show them what you want to achieve and that you're in it for the long haul. What are you hoping to do? Maybe you want to specialize in something, or maybe you see yourself in a leadership position someday. RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you figure out what kind of career paths are possible in the mining industry, so you can be specific about what you're aiming for.
Yeah, good point. And make sure you tell them how you plan to achieve your goals. They want to know that you've thought this through and that your goals match up with the company's goals.
Right. They might ask, how do you think your skills and experience will help our company be successful? So basically, connect what you want to achieve with what the company wants to achieve and show them that you understand how their business works.
For sure. And last but not least, the question that lets you take control. Do you have any questions for us?
You should always have questions ready. It shows that you're interested and want to know more. But don't ask things that you can easily find online. Ask them about the company culture, what it's like to work on the team, or even something specific about the job. RoleCatcher's AI can even help you come up with smart questions based on the company and the job you're applying for.
That's really cool. Asking good questions not only helps you learn more about the job, but it also shows the interviewer that you're serious about it.
So true. Well, there you have it. That was our deep dive into how to get ready for an interview for an underground miner position. We went through all those tough questions. We talked about the amazing resources that RoleCatcher has and how their AI can give you a real advantage.
Absolutely. Remember, being prepared is so important. But don't forget to let your passion for mining show through, too.
Yeah, that passion, combined with all the prep work you do, will make you stand out as a candidate. And here's something to think about as you keep getting ready for your interview. How is technology changing the mining industry? And what skills are going to be most important in the future? Keep those questions in mind as you go on this exciting career journey. Good luck out there.